this powerful video, we'll reveal the crucial steps you must take to grow, break free from limitations, and embrace the greatness within you. Watch till the end. You won't want to miss the life-changing insights that could transform your future forever. Your journey starts here. Welcome to the channel. We're so glad you're here. We love you, and God bless you more. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update or new video from us. Stay connected and be the first to watch our latest content. Peter, can I talk to you for a moment? I've been having these dreams lately, and they keep showing me becoming a great person in the future. I don't really understand what they mean, but they feel significant. Jude, dreams are just dreams. They don't always mean anything. You shouldn't read too much into them. But these dreams feel so vivid and real. I can't shake the feeling that there's something more to them. They show me achieving great things, and I can't help but wonder if it's a sign of what's to come. Look, dreams are often just the product of our own hopes and fears. They don't determine the future. It's better to focus on what you can do now rather than getting caught up in dreams of grandeur. I guess you're right. I just thought they might mean something, especially with how often I've been having them. Anyway, have you seen the new scrolls that just arrived at the marketplace? I hear they have some fascinating stories in them. Maybe you should check those out instead of focusing on dreams. Yeah, I suppose I could. I just wanted to share what I've been experiencing with you. I thought you might have some insight or advice. I understand, but just remember that dreams can be misleading. It's better to stay grounded and work with what you have. Sometimes, it's not worth getting too excited about things we can't control. Okay, Peter. I'll try to keep that in mind. Thanks for listening. How will I be watching my younger brother becoming great while I'm left in the dark about my own future? It's hard enough knowing he's got dreams of greatness when I don't even know what lies ahead for me. Sometimes I wonder why I'm the elder if it seems like I'm stuck without a clear path. It's frustrating. I thought being the elder meant I'd have things figured out, or at least a clearer sense of direction. But here I am, feeling lost and uncertain about my own future. Why does he get the dreams and the promise, and I'm left feeling like there's nothing set for me? It's just not fair.
Jude, I need to talk to you. Things have been really tough for our family lately. The debts keep piling up, and I don't know how we're going to manage everything. It feels like every day brings a new challenge, and it's just overwhelming. The bills are mounting, and we've had nothing but bad news lately. I can hardly see a way out.
Mom, I understand it's hard, but I believe we can get through this. I think it's time for me to pray about it. God can help us find a way.
I'm done. I've tried everything I can think of, and it feels like nothing is changing. I don't have the energy to keep fighting this. You can go ahead and pray if you want, but I've reached the end of my rope.
Don't lose hope. I know it's been tough, but prayer can make a difference. Maybe if we both try, we can see some change.
I've done all I can. I'm tired, Jude. It's your turn now. You go and pray, and maybe things will turn around. I just don't have the strength to keep hoping right now.
All right, Mom. I'll pray and ask for guidance and help. We'll face this together, even if it feels like you're at your limit.
Thank you, Jude. I appreciate it. I hope you're right. Maybe your prayers will bring the change we need.
You're about to start praying again, aren't you? It seems like you're the only one in this house who's always praying and fasting, like you're the only person with a future to protect. I'm tired of it, honestly. Peter, I really need to focus on my prayers right now. Can we discuss this later? I believe it's important for me to pray and fast. No, Jude, we're going to talk about this now. I don't want you to keep disturbing my peace with your constant prayers. It's like you're the only one who matters around here. And while we're at it, let's talk about how you're always making a big deal about your dreams and how you think they're so important. Please, Peter, can we discuss this later? I'm trying to focus on my prayers, and I really need to concentrate right now. No, Jude. I want an answer now. You'll start talking about how the stars bow before you and how your future is so bright, but right now I need to address this. I'm your elder brother, and I deserve respect. I understand you're upset, but please, can we deal with this after I've finished praying? I'm just trying to do what I believe is right. No. I want a response to what I've said now. Later, you'll be talking about how everything is about you and your future. I need to know why you think you're the only one who matters around here.
I'm not saying that I'm the only one who matters. I'm just trying to follow what I believe is right for our family. But we can talk about this when I'm done with my prayer.
Fine, but remember, I am your elder brother. Don't think you can just push my concerns aside.
What kind of energy is this? I'm starting to feel like I'm less of a person. It's like my elder brother sees me as a competitor, always undermining my efforts and dreams. And when I talk to my friends, it feels like I don't belong. They look at me like I'm an outsider. What am I doing wrong? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just trying to follow what I believe is right, and yet, it feels like the world is against me. Why is everything so difficult? Why does it seem like there's so much opposition, and why does it feel like the world is so wicked? I just don't understand why I'm facing this struggle.
Hey, about the gathering we're planning, I don't think we need to inform Jude about it. You know how he is, he'll just try to get us into conforming to his ideas. He's always so different from the rest of us. I completely agree. We don't need him ruining the day with his constant moralizing and trying to make us feel bad for not following his ways. Let's just keep it to ourselves and have a good time without his interference.
Exactly.
It's better if we just go ahead and enjoy ourselves without having to deal with him trying to change everything. Agreed. Let's stick to our plan and not mention anything to Jude. It'll be a lot more enjoyable if we don't have to worry about his reactions.
Sounds good to me.
We'll make sure it's a day we can all enjoy, without any added stress. Perfect. Let's keep this between us and move forward with the plan.
I must return to the city tomorrow after having these meetings with Mr. Owens. There's a lot to handle, and I can't afford to stay here any longer. I need to get back to the city after wrapping up our discussions. That's Jude. Jude, what's going on with you? I've known you since you were a kid, and I always saw you as a child of great destiny. But it seems like you're struggling.
Sir, I'm trying to understand how I can fulfill this great destiny you speak of. What can I do as the chosen one?
You need to walk away from your friends and family for several important reasons. 1. To remove you from envy and negative influence. Chosen ones, often referred to as those who have been set apart by God for a unique purpose, sometimes find it necessary to walk away from friends and family to protect themselves from envy and negative influence. This separation isn't about a lack of love or care, but rather about safeguarding the divine calling and the purity of their mission. Envy is a powerful and destructive force that can arise even in the closest relationships. When God elevates someone to a position of favor, those around them, friends, family, or acquaintances, may begin to feel threatened or overshadowed. This feeling of envy can lead to harmful actions or words, intentionally or unintentionally, that could derail the chosen one's path. The Bible tells us that for where envy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder in every evil thing. James 3:16. Envy breeds discord, strife, and an environment that is counterproductive to spiritual growth and the fulfillment of God's purpose. Negative influence from those close to us can also pose a significant challenge. Often, friends and family, with good intentions, might advise or pressure the chosen one to take paths that are more conventional, less risky, or more aligned with worldly wisdom rather than divine instruction. They might not understand the unique calling or the sacrifices it entails, and out of concern or misunderstanding, they might discourage the chosen one from fully obeying God's directives. This influence, though well-meaning, can subtly steer the chosen one away from their divine path. The Bible cautions, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals. 1 Corinthians 15:33. The influence of those who do not share or understand the same spiritual vision can hinder the chosen one's progress and dilute their focus on God's will. A profound biblical example of this is found in the life of Joseph. Joseph was dearly loved by his father Jacob, but his brothers were envious of him because of his father's favoritism and Joseph's prophetic dreams, which foretold his future prominence over them. This envy grew to the point where his brothers plotted to kill him, but instead, they sold him into slavery. Genesis 37:18-28. Had Joseph stayed with his brothers, their envy could have led to his death, or at the very least, it would have severely impeded the fulfillment of his destiny. Yet, Joseph's separation from his family, though painful and filled with trials, was the very process that God used to prepare him for his destiny. In Egypt, far from his family, Joseph rose to a position of power, ultimately saving many lives, including those of his own family members during a severe famine. Genesis 41-42. His separation was necessary for God to fully develop and use him for his purposes. Joseph's story exemplifies how God can turn what seems like a tragic separation into a powerful testimony of his sovereign plan. Another example is Abraham, who was called by God to leave his country, his people, and his father's household, to go to a land that God would show him. Genesis 12:1. This call to separation was essential because God had a unique covenant and purpose for Abraham that required him to be free from the influence of his familiar surroundings and family ties. This move set Abraham apart, both physically and spiritually, allowing him to fully trust and depend on God, and ultimately become the father of many nations. Had Abraham stayed with his family, he might have been swayed by their customs, beliefs, or opinions, which could have hindered the fulfillment of God's promises to him. In both examples, we see that separation from friends and family, though difficult, was crucial for protecting the chosen ones from envy and negative influences. It allowed them to be in an environment where they could fully embrace their divine calling without interference. For those who are chosen, walking away from familiar relationships is sometimes necessary to preserve the purity of their purpose and to allow God to work in and through them without hindrance. It's a sacrifice that ultimately leads to a greater fulfillment of God's plans, not just for them, but for many others who will be blessed through their obedience. 2. To give you a new beginning. One of the profound reasons chosen ones must walk away from friends and family is to give them a new beginning. When God calls someone for a special purpose, he often requires them to leave behind their familiar surroundings, relationships, and past associations to enter into a new phase of life where they can fully embrace their divine destiny. This separation, while challenging, is crucial for breaking free from past limitations, old mindsets, and the influences that might hinder the new work God wants to do in their lives. A new beginning represents a fresh start, an opportunity to redefine one's identity, purpose, and direction in alignment with God's plans. Friends and family, as dear as they are, often know us in the context of our past. They have seen us at our weakest, most vulnerable, and most flawed moments. They have formed opinions and expectations based on who we have been, not necessarily who we are becoming or who God is calling us to be. These preconceived notions can create an environment where change is resisted and growth is stifled. Jesus himself acknowledged this when he said, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home." Matthew 13:57. Sometimes, to fully step into the new identity God has for us, we must leave behind those who are too familiar with the old. Moreover, a new beginning often requires new surroundings and new relationships that can foster the growth and development needed for the chosen one's divine assignment. Old environments can carry the weight of past mistakes, failures, and patterns of behavior that can be difficult to break free from if one remains in the same setting. By stepping away from friends and family, the chosen one can create space for God to introduce new people, new opportunities, and new experiences that align with their divine calling. This separation can be seen as a form of divine pruning, where God removes the old to make way for the new, much like how a gardener prunes a plant to encourage fresh growth. A powerful biblical example of this is found in the life of Abraham. When God called Abraham, then Abram, he said to him, "Go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you." Genesis 12:1. This call was not just a physical relocation but a call to a completely new beginning. Abraham was to leave behind everything that defined his past, his homeland, his family ties, and his cultural identity, to embark on a journey with God to an unknown destination. This separation was necessary for Abraham to become the father of many nations, as God had promised him. By leaving his family and familiar surroundings, Abraham entered into a covenant relationship with God that redefined his identity and purpose. God gave him a new name, changing it from Abram, which means exalted father, to Abraham, meaning father of many. Genesis 17:5. This new name signified the new beginning that God was bringing into Abraham's life. Had Abraham stayed with his family, he might have remained in the comfort of his past, never stepping into the vast promise that God had for him. His obedience to leave everything behind set the stage for the fulfillment of God's promises, not only in his life, but in the lives of his descendants, who would become a great nation. Another significant example is the story of Moses. After fleeing from Egypt, where he had been raised as a prince, Moses spent 40 years in the desert of Midian, far from his family and the Egyptian royal court. This period of separation was a time of preparation and transformation for Moses. When God appeared to him in the burning bush and called him to return to Egypt to lead the Israelites out of slavery, it was a call to a new beginning for Moses. He was no longer the prince of Egypt or the fugitive who had fled in fear. He was now God's chosen leader, tasked with delivering his people. This new beginning required Moses to leave behind the life he had known, both in Egypt and in Midian, to step into his role as the leader of a nation. The years of separation allowed Moses to shed the identity and influence of his past, preparing him to embrace the new mission God had for him. It was through this process that Moses was able to lead the Israelites to freedom and receive the 10 Commandments, establishing a new covenant between God and his people. In both of these examples, we see that God often requires a physical and relational separation to give his chosen ones a new beginning. This new beginning is essential for fulfilling the divine purposes that God has ordained for their lives. By walking away from friends and family, the chosen one can step into a new identity, embrace new opportunities, and enter into a deeper relationship with God that positions them for the great things he has in store. The journey may be difficult, but it is through this process of separation and renewal that the chosen one is transformed and prepared to carry out God's will in a powerful way. 3. To undergo refinement. One of the profound reasons chosen ones must walk away from friends and family is to undergo a process of refinement. When God sets someone apart for a specific purpose, he often needs to refine them, shaping their character, deepening their faith, and purifying their motives so they can fully embrace the calling he has placed on their life. This refinement is a transformative process that often requires separation from familiar surroundings and relationships, allowing God to work in the chosen one's life without the distractions and influences that could hinder their growth. Refinement is much like the process of purifying precious metals. Gold, for instance, is refined by being subjected to intense heat, which melts it down and allows impurities to rise to the surface and be removed. Similarly, when God refines a chosen one, he allows them to go through challenges, trials, and periods of isolation that serve to strip away the impurities in their character, their pride, fear, doubt, and reliance on human wisdom, so that they emerge purer, stronger, and more aligned with his will. When a chosen one remains in close proximity to friends and family, there can be a tendency to rely on those relationships for comfort, validation, and guidance. While these connections are important, they can sometimes become crutches that prevent the chosen one from fully depending on God. Friends and family, even with the best intentions, might offer advice or support that is based on their own understanding rather than divine wisdom. This can interfere with the refining work God wants to do, as it can keep the chosen one from confronting the deeper issues in their heart that need to be addressed. The process of refinement often involves stripping away the old to make way for the new. This can mean letting go of old habits, mindsets, and even relationships that are not conducive to the new level of spiritual maturity and purpose that God is calling the chosen one to. When God leads someone to walk away from their familiar surroundings, it creates an environment where they can be fully exposed to his refining fire. In this place of solitude, the chosen one is more likely to turn to God with their struggles, seek his guidance with greater intensity, and develop a deeper, more personal relationship with him. A powerful biblical example of this refining process can be seen in the life of Moses. Moses was raised in the Egyptian royal court, surrounded by wealth, power, and influence. He was familiar with the ways of the world, but God had a different plan for him. After Moses fled Egypt, having killed an Egyptian in a moment of anger, he found himself in the desert of Midian, far from the life he had known. For 40 years, Moses lived in obscurity, tending sheep in the wilderness, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the Egyptian palace. This period of separation and isolation was crucial for Moses' refinement. In the desert, away from the influences of the Egyptian court and his Hebrew family, Moses was alone with God. It was here, in the solitude of the wilderness, that God began to shape and mold Moses' character, preparing him for the immense task of leading the Israelites out of slavery. The desert was Moses' crucible, where his pride, fear, and impulsiveness were burned away, and he learned humility, patience, and total reliance on God. When God finally called Moses from the burning bush, Moses was a changed man. The refining process had prepared him to lead a nation, not through the power of an earthly kingdom, but through the power and wisdom of God. This transformation would not have been possible had Moses remained in Egypt. surrounded by the influences and expectations of his past. It was the separation and subsequent refinement that equipped Moses to fulfill his divine purpose. Another compelling example is Joseph. Sold into slavery by his jealous brothers, Joseph was taken far from his family and the life he knew. As a slave in Egypt, and later as a prisoner, Joseph endured years of hardship, isolation, and unjust treatment. Yet, it was during these years of separation from his family that God refined Joseph's character. The trials Joseph faced were the tools God used to purge him of any lingering pride or bitterness, to deepen his faith, and to prepare him for the extraordinary role he would eventually play as a leader in Egypt. When the time came, Joseph was elevated to a position of great authority, second only to Pharaoh, and was used by God to save countless lives, including those of his own family. The years of separation and refinement had transformed Joseph into a wise and compassionate leader who was able to forgive his brothers and recognize God's hand in his suffering. He famously told them, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50:20. Joseph's refinement through suffering and separation was essential for the fulfillment of his divine destiny. In both examples, we see that walking away from friends and family is sometimes necessary for God to refine his chosen ones. The process of refinement is not easy, but it is essential for preparing the chosen one to fulfill their divine purpose. Through the trials, isolation, and challenges that come with separation, God works to purify their hearts, strengthen their faith, and equip them with the character and wisdom they will need for the tasks ahead. It is in the crucible of refinement that the chosen one is transformed into a vessel that God can use in powerful and extraordinary ways. 4. To break free from past patterns. These patterns, often rooted in past experiences, behaviors, or mindsets, can significantly influence one's present and future. They shape how individuals respond to life's challenges, how they relate to others, and how they perceive themselves and their purpose. To fully embrace their divine calling, chosen ones often need to step away from these ingrained patterns and environments that reinforce them. This departure creates the space necessary for transformation, renewal, and the development of a new identity aligned with God's purposes. Breaking free from past patterns involves a deliberate and often difficult process of releasing old habits, relationships, and ways of thinking that no longer serve one's spiritual growth or divine purpose. Friends and family, while supportive, can sometimes be enablers of these patterns. Their influence, whether intentional or not, can perpetuate old behaviors or limit the chosen one's ability to change and grow. By walking away from these familiar contexts, chosen ones can gain the freedom to confront and overcome these patterns, making way for a new way of living and thinking that reflects their true identity in Christ. This process of breaking free is crucial for several reasons. First, old patterns often include limiting beliefs or behaviors that hinder personal and spiritual growth. For instance, a person might struggle with insecurity, fear, or unhealthy relationships that are deeply embedded in their past. These patterns can be reinforced by their current environment, making it challenging to break free. By distancing themselves from these environments, chosen ones create an opportunity to address these issues without the constant reinforcement of past behaviors. Second, breaking free from past patterns allows chosen ones to embrace a new identity in Christ. The journey of faith involves becoming a new creation, which requires shedding old ways and embracing the transformative power of God. This transformation often necessitates a shift in environment and relationships to support the new identity being developed. In a new context, chosen ones are better positioned to adopt new ways of thinking, behave differently, and fully engage in their divine purpose. A compelling biblical example of breaking free from past patterns is found in the life of Moses. Moses was born into a Hebrew family, but was raised in the palace of Pharaoh as an adopted son of the Egyptian royal family, Exodus 2:10. This upbringing provided Moses with privilege and education, but it also tied him to the patterns and systems of Egyptian society, which were contrary to his true identity and calling. Moses' journey toward breaking free began when he witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave and, in anger, killed the Egyptian, Exodus 2:11-12. This act led to Moses fleeing Egypt to escape Pharaoh's wrath and taking refuge in the land of Midian. This flight was not merely a physical escape, but a crucial step in Moses' process of breaking free from the past patterns that defined his life in Egypt. In Midian, Moses lived as a shepherd for 40 years, a significant period that was both the time of physical separation from Egypt and a time of deep spiritual and personal transformation. During this period, Moses encountered God at the burning bush, where God called him to return to Egypt and lead the Israelites out of slavery. Exodus 3, 1-10. This call was not just a return to a geographical location but a call to confront and break free from the patterns and identity of his past. Moses' life in Midian was pivotal in breaking free from his Egyptian upbringing. The shepherding life in Midian allowed Moses to develop humility, patience, and a deeper understanding of God's character. These qualities were essential for leading the Israelites through the wilderness and establishing a new covenant with God. The old patterns of Egyptian royalty, ambition, power, and privilege were replaced by a new identity defined by servanthood, faith, and obedience. The call to return to Egypt and confront Pharaoh was not merely about liberating the Israelites. It was also about Moses embracing a new role and identity that required him to break free from his past. His transformation was profound, as he went from a prince of Egypt to a prophet and leader of God's people. This transition was made possible by his willingness to leave behind the comfort of his past life and fully engage with the new identity and purpose God had for him. Moses' story illustrates the necessity of breaking free from past patterns to fulfill one's divine purpose. The process of leaving behind old environments and embracing new ones is essential for personal and spiritual growth. For chosen ones, this departure creates the space needed for God to reshape their identity, renew their mind, and align them with their true calling. By stepping away from familiar patterns and relationships, they position themselves to fully experience the transformative power of God and to step into the roles and opportunities He has prepared for them. In essence, breaking free from past patterns is not about rejecting one's past or family, but about creating the conditions for spiritual and personal renewal. It involves leaving behind the old ways that hinder growth and embracing the new identity and purpose that God has for them. This journey requires courage and faith, but leads to a profound transformation that enables chosen ones to fulfill their divine calling and make a significant impact in their world. 5. To cultivate total dependence on God. One of the profound reasons chosen ones must walk away from friends and family is to cultivate total dependence on God. In the journey of faith, there comes a point when God requires His chosen ones to step out of their comfort zones, away from the familiar support systems that have sustained them, and into a place where they must rely solely on Him. This separation, though difficult, is essential for deepening their trust in God and aligning them more closely with His will. Total dependence on God is a foundational principle in the life of a chosen one. It is in those moments of solitude and separation that the chosen one learns to rely on God for every need, emotional, spiritual, and even physical. Friends and family, while loving and supportive, can sometimes become crutches that prevent the chosen one from fully experiencing the depth of God's provision and guidance. When surrounded by those who care for us, it is easy to seek their counsel, lean on their support, or even depend on them for solutions to our problems. However, these well-intentioned supports can inadvertently diminish our reliance on God. Walking away from friends and family creates a space where the chosen one is left with no one to turn to but God. In this place of solitude, the relationship with God becomes more intimate and personal. The chosen one learns to hear God's voice more clearly, to seek His wisdom more fervently, and to trust in His timing and provision with greater faith. This process transforms the chosen one from someone who merely believes in God to someone who is wholly dependent on Him for every aspect of their life. This dependence is not about God wanting to isolate His chosen ones for the sake of loneliness, but rather about drawing them into a deeper relationship where they can experience His love, guidance, and power in ways they never could while surrounded by the familiar. It is in the wilderness, away from the distractions and influences of others, that God often speaks most profoundly, revealing His plans and purposes with clarity. The Bible illustrates this truth through the lives of many of God's chosen ones, but perhaps none more powerfully than Elijah. Elijah was one of the greatest prophets in the Bible, known for his boldness and unwavering commitment to God. However, even Elijah needed to be brought to a place of total dependence on God. After boldly confronting King Ahab and declaring a drought upon the land of Israel, God instructed Elijah to leave and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. 1 Kings 17, 2-4. There, away from everyone he knew and every familiar resource, Elijah was entirely dependent on God for his survival. God provided for Elijah in miraculous ways. He sent ravens to bring him bread and meat every morning and evening, and Elijah drank from the brook until it dried up due to the drought. This period of isolation was critical for Elijah, as it reinforced his understanding that his sustenance came from God alone. It wasn't the king's favor, the support of the people, or his own strength that would sustain him, it was God's hand. When the brook dried up, God directed Elijah to go to Zarephath, where he would be provided for by a widow. 1 Kings 17, 8-16. Again, this was an act of total dependence on God, as Elijah had to trust that God would fulfill his promise through unlikely means, a poor widow in the midst of a famine. This entire journey was about teaching Elijah to trust God completely, even when circumstances seemed dire and the resources scarce. Elijah's dependence on God reached its pinnacle on Mount Carmel, where he confronted the prophets of Baal in one of the most dramatic showdowns in biblical history. Surrounded by his enemies and far from any human support, Elijah called on God to send fire from heaven to consume the sacrifice he had prepared. His total reliance on God's power, rather than his own abilities or the support of others, was rewarded when God sent fire from heaven, proving his supremacy and vindicating Elijah before the people. 1 Kings 18:36-39. This story of Elijah illustrates the profound truth that sometimes God must remove us from our familiar surroundings and relationships to cultivate a deeper dependence on him. In these moments of separation, the chosen one learns that God is their provider, their protector, and their source of strength. They come to understand that, in the absence of human support, God is more than enough to meet their needs and fulfill his purposes in their lives. This kind of dependence is not just about surviving difficult times. It's about thriving in them, knowing that God is faithful and that his provision is perfect. For chosen ones, this journey of total dependence often leads to a greater revelation of God's character and a deeper trust that empowers them to accomplish the extraordinary tasks he has set before them. In essence, walking away from friends and family to cultivate total dependence on God is not about abandonment, but about realignment. It's about stepping into a place where God becomes the chosen one's everything, where they rely on him for every decision, every need, and every step forward. It is in this place of deep dependence that the chosen one is truly equipped to carry out the divine mission that God has ordained for their life, with the assurance that they are never alone, for God is always with them, guiding, providing, and sustaining them every step of the way. 6. To develop spiritual growth. Spiritual growth is a deep and transformative journey that requires solitude, reflection, and an unbroken connection with God. While friends and family provide love, support, and community, they can also, unintentionally, be sources of distraction or limitation when God is calling someone to higher levels of spiritual maturity. Walking away from these familiar surroundings is often necessary to create an environment where spiritual growth can flourish without the constraints of external influences. Spiritual growth involves a deepening of one's relationship with God, a greater understanding of his word, and the cultivation of virtues like patience, humility, faith, and love. It's a process that requires focus, discipline, and sometimes, a radical change in one's environment. When a chosen one remains too close to their friends and family, there is often a comfort in the familiar, a reliance on their wisdom, their ways of thinking, and their expectations. This comfort, though natural, can hinder the chosen one from stepping into the unknown territories where God wants to stretch their faith and deepen their spiritual insight. By walking away from friends and family, the chosen one enters a space of solitude where their primary relationship is with God. In this place of isolation, they are more attuned to the still, small voice of the Holy Spirit, guiding them into deeper truths and greater understanding. Without the noise of competing voices and the pull of social obligations, they can dedicate more time to prayer, meditation, and studying the Word of God. This intense focus on their spiritual journey allows for a more profound transformation, as they are able to hear God's direction clearly and apply it directly to their lives. Moreover, separation from familiar relationships forces the chosen one to confront their inner self, those areas of weakness, doubt, and fear that often go unaddressed when they are surrounded by the comfort of others. In solitude, they are stripped of their usual coping mechanisms and are brought face to face with their need for God's grace and strength. This confrontation, though challenging, is crucial for spiritual growth. It is in these moments of vulnerability that they learn to depend entirely on God, to seek His wisdom above all else, and to trust in His timing and plans. A powerful biblical example of spiritual growth through separation is found in the life of Paul the Apostle. Before he became one of the most influential leaders of the early church, Paul was known as Saul, a zealous Pharisee who persecuted Christians. After his dramatic encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, where he was struck blind and heard the voice of Christ calling him to a new mission, Paul's life was radically transformed. Acts 9, 3-9. However, this transformation wasn't instantaneous. It required a period of intense spiritual growth that came through separation from his former life. After his conversion, Paul did not immediately begin his ministry. Instead, he retreated into the wilderness of Arabia for 3 years. Galatians 1:17-18. During this time, Paul was isolated from his former friends, his family, and even the early Christian community. This period of solitude was critical for Paul's spiritual growth. In the wilderness, he had the opportunity to wrestle with his past, to delve deeply into the scriptures, and to receive direct revelation from Christ. It was here, in the quiet and desolate places, that Paul's understanding of the gospel was solidified and his faith was strengthened. This separation allowed Paul to develop a profound relationship with God, independent of the influences of others. By the time he re-emerged and began his ministry, Paul was no longer the zealous Pharisee relying on human tradition, but a transformed apostle, fully dependent on the Holy Spirit and deeply rooted in the knowledge of Christ. His teachings, letters, and missionary journeys would go on to shape the foundation of Christian theology and spread the gospel to the Gentiles, a mission that required the depth of spiritual maturity he gained during his time of separation. Paul's experience teaches us that spiritual growth often requires a season of solitude, where the chosen one is set apart from the influences of friends and family to focus entirely on their relationship with God. In this space, they are free to explore the depths of their faith, to question, to learn, and to grow without the pressure of meeting others' expectations or conforming to their views. Furthermore, this time of separation allows the chosen one to develop a spiritual resilience that can withstand the challenges of their calling. Just as Paul faced immense trials, persecution, and hardship in his ministry, the chosen one needs a solid spiritual foundation to endure the difficulties that come with fulfilling their divine purpose. This foundation is built during those times of solitude, where their faith is tested and strengthened, and their understanding of God's will is deepened. In essence, walking away from friends and family is not about abandoning them, but about creating the necessary space for spiritual growth. It's about stepping into a season where the chosen one can focus entirely on their relationship with God, allowing Him to mold them, teach them, and prepare them for the greater things He has in store. This separation is a crucial part of their spiritual journey, where they learn to listen to God's voice above all others and to grow into the fullness of their calling. Through this process, the chosen one emerges with a deeper, more mature faith that equips them to fulfill their purpose with wisdom, courage, and unwavering trust in God. Just as Paul's time in Arabia prepared him for a life of powerful ministry, the chosen one's time of separation is a vital period of preparation, enabling them to walk confidently in the path that God has set before them, fully empowered by His Spirit and grounded in His truth. 7. To encounter new opportunities. One of the significant reasons chosen ones must walk away from friends and family is to encounter new opportunities. The journey of faith often requires stepping out of the familiar and into the unknown to experience the full range of opportunities that God has prepared. When chosen ones remain entrenched in their current environments, they can become comfortable and restricted by the limitations and expectations that come with their established relationships and surroundings. Leaving behind these familiar settings opens the door to new possibilities, experiences, and divine assignments that align with God's greater plan. Encountering new opportunities involves venturing into unfamiliar territories where God can reveal new paths and possibilities that were previously out of reach. These opportunities might include new roles, relationships, assignments, or areas of influence that are essential for fulfilling the chosen one's divine purpose. However, such opportunities often require a departure from the comfort zone of known environments and the supportive, yet potentially limiting, influence of friends and family. When a chosen one moves away from their familiar surroundings, they are more likely to encounter situations and people that challenge them to grow and expand their horizons. This movement forces them to adapt, learn, and seize new opportunities that would not have been available in their previous context. It is in these new environments that they may discover unique talents, passions, and divine assignments that were hidden or dormant in their old settings. A compelling biblical example of this principle is found in the life of Abraham. Abraham, originally named Abram, lived in Ur of the Chaldeans, a prosperous and well-established city in ancient Mesopotamia. His life was likely marked by stability, familiar relationships, and a predictable routine. However, God had a different plan for Abraham. He called Abraham to leave his homeland and move to an entirely new land that God would show him. Genesis 12, 1-3. This call was not merely a request for physical relocation, but a divine invitation to encounter new opportunities that would have profound implications for Abraham's life and the future of his descendants. God promised Abraham that he would make him into a great nation, bless him, and make his name great, so that he would be a blessing to others. Genesis 12, 2. This promise was contingent upon Abraham's willingness to leave his familiar surroundings and step into the unknown. Abraham's obedience to this call led him to Canaan, a land that was not only new and unfamiliar, but also fraught with challenges and opportunities. In Canaan, Abraham encountered a host of new experiences and divine opportunities. He formed alliances with local kings, built altars to worship God, and received further revelations and promises from God, including the covenant that his descendants would inherit the land. Genesis 15:18. The journey and experiences in Canaan were pivotal in shaping Abraham into the patriarch of a great nation, the Israelites. This separation from Ur allowed Abraham to encounter opportunities that would not have been possible had he remained in his homeland. It was in this new land that God tested his faith, expanded his vision, and prepared him for the significant role he would play in the unfolding of God's redemptive plan. The new opportunities Abraham encountered were instrumental in fulfilling his destiny and impacting future generations. Similarly, when chosen ones walk away from their friends and family, they open themselves to a realm of new opportunities that are aligned with God's broader plan. The departure from familiar contexts often leads to unexpected and divinely orchestrated encounters, assignments, and relationships that can propel them toward their divine calling. It's through this journey into the unknown that they can fully embrace the opportunities God has prepared for them, opportunities that would remain undiscovered if they stayed within the confines of their old environments. For instance, consider the experience of Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers and taken to Egypt. While this separation from his family was a traumatic and challenging experience, it was also the catalyst for a series of new opportunities. In Egypt, Joseph encountered the opportunity to serve in Potiphar's house, where he demonstrated his integrity and skill. His rise from a slave to a trusted servant eventually led to his imprisonment, where he interpreted dreams that positioned him to be summoned by Pharaoh. Joseph's ability to interpret Pharaoh's dreams provided him with an unprecedented opportunity to advise the ruler on how to prepare for a coming famine. This opportunity was directly linked to God's plan for Joseph to become a key figure in managing Egypt's resources and eventually reconciling with his family. Joseph's time in Egypt was marked by significant challenges, but these were the very circumstances that opened doors to new opportunities that were crucial for his mission and the preservation of many lives. In essence, walking away from friends and family is not about abandoning those relationships, but about stepping into a space where new opportunities can arise. It's about leaving behind the comfort of the familiar to embrace the new possibilities that God has prepared. These new opportunities often involve facing challenges, adapting to new situations, and seizing roles that are integral to fulfilling the chosen one's divine purpose. Through the stories of Abraham and Joseph, we see that stepping away from the familiar environment and relationships can lead to profound encounters with new opportunities. These opportunities are not just about personal advancement, but about aligning with God's greater plan and impacting the world in ways that were previously unimaginable. The journey into the unknown, driven by faith and obedience, ultimately reveals the richness of God's provision and the breadth of His plans for those who trust Him enough to follow where He leads.
I can relate and resonate with what you're saying. I've faced a lot of challenges despite not yet fulfilling my destiny. It's been tough, and I feel like I'm constantly struggling against these limitations.
I understand, Jude. It's not easy, but sometimes stepping away is necessary to move forward. Embrace the change and trust that it will lead you to the path you're meant to follow.
Thank you so much, sir, for showing me the way to grow. Your guidance means a lot to me. I've been searching for direction, and you've helped me see the path more clearly. I feel more confident now in taking the necessary steps to fulfill my destiny. I truly appreciate your wisdom and support.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.